Today I'd like to introduce a family tree app you probably haven't heard of yet. So many videos are out there, but I haven't seen a similar talk about this one yet. I'm absolutely in love with it and think it's the perfect software to keep track of family trees, so I had to share. The app is called My Family Tree by Chronoplex and can be downloaded for free on their website. It's currently only available for Windows. When you open the app, you're greeted with a full view of your family's tree. In this example, this is a family tree I've imported from a Sims 3 save file. I used an NROS mod to generate the Gedcom file and import it directly into the app. It actually lets me carry on traits, skills, and whatnot as well, so it's really cool. You'll see later in the video under the facts section how I have all of this data saved for those particular Sims. What I really love about this app is how customizable it is. For example, in this dashboard view of my family tree, I can actually change the way I can view this family tree. So under charts, in the drop down, I have my classic family tree view, but I can also choose an ancestors view. So this is what the ancestors view looks like. Roxy Parks being the youngest of this lineage. Then we have two different fan views. So this one has the youngest person in the family at the center, and you see fanning outwards her descendants. If I were to choose, for example, Aurelia, and then choose descendants, I see who is a direct descendant of her. So the other way around, basically, which is a really cool way to visualize your family tree. So here we have, again, the classic family view, this time with Aurelia at the top of the family tree. The classic view is also very customizable. So if you go to the wrench tool here, you have many different options. So you can choose, for example, how many generations you want to be shown, what information is shown under each person, so their occupation, their age, whether or not they're deceased, things like that. You also have options in how the family tree is displayed visually, so font size, tree line thickness. You also can select whether or not direct bloodlines are shown. That's more clear here in this family tree with the bloodlines. We have this red line running through, and that shows you who was basically the heir of our founder, Eric Parks. So you can see here in each generation, well, not necessarily the heir, because if you select a different sim, they also have their own bloodline, but it's very interesting to see who they directly descended from. You can also show a generation outline. So here we're in the 5th generation, and you have other options as well to customize. So it's really cool. To the right, you can see more details about the sim you've selected. So in this case, we have Elliot Parks. Right over here, let's zoom in. If you use real-time birth dates, you will have an age and a birth as well, but you don't have to use that. In this section here, you can add all sorts of details about your sim. For example, their profile photo, of course, tags, and also edit their relationships or facts about them. You can also add photos and a story to them, and you can also create relationships. So if we click on details, here you see we have his name, his gender, we have the birth date. We can check whether or not this sim is living. We can give them a birthplace, an occupation, and we can add other information. Genetics is not so important here because we don't actually have DNA test results for Sims, but it's a fun place where you can add notes if you wanted to. Relationships is of course very useful. You have here parent, sibling, and spouse relationships, which you can also further edit. For example, if we had a marriage here, which we have here actually, a current marriage, you can actually change it to divorced or engaged or deceased, so if it's a widow, for example. So you can actually modify relationships more than just married or not married. And you can actually also have other types of relationships, so an affair, for example. Probably one of the coolest features about this app is that you can add photos and a story to your sim. So here's what that interface looks like. You can add photos here or any other images relating to that sim. Under the view option, select show properties, add further details to that particular image, so a title or description, a place, and other different metadata. If you right click on the image, you can also set it as a family crest. So whenever that sim is selected, you'll actually see that family crest in the corner here, which is pretty cool. And of course, last but not least, you can click here and start a new story. So you have plenty of formatting options here, as well as linking options to write up the story of that particular sim. It could be their biography, it could be any information about life changes. You really have a lot of space and freedom here to add more information and details about your Sims and have it directly linked to their family tree. You can also view your sim photos in a slideshow. Simply access this option under the view, drop down, and then here you go. You just press I if there were multiple photos to flick through them. Under facts, you can add different attributes and events to a sim. In this case, plenty of skills and traits and more details about my sim were automatically imported via that Gedcom file I had spit out with that NROS mod, but you can easily manually add a new attribute as well. If you look closely, you might notice that some of the relations here, the associations, are a bit disjointed, a bit shifted. So for example, high school is not this person's life wish. Animal rescuer is. Or for example, seafoam is not their favorite food, it's their favorite color. So I'm not sure how this happened with the import. Each attribute was shifted by 1. This is not a big deal for me because I understand, of course, that the alma mater is the Stereo Community School and not this road, or their zodiac is Cancer. So when reading through these attributes, I understand that, but just a note that I myself haven't yet perfected the import of the Gedcom file to have everything related correctly. But the essence is there, the information is there, and for me that's enough. Of course, if you prefer, you can do everything manually. You just have to right-click, add fact, and you actually have quite a few facts here, types of events that could be relevant to your sim, but also here we have attributes such as alma mater, cast. Oh, these are actually imported directly from my Gedcom file, I believe, a lot of these, but some of them are also from the app itself, for example, hair color or hobbies. You can also add a completely new fact. You just have to look out for the little card here called fact with the star icon in the corner. You click on that, click add, then you can add what type it is. So in this case, I want to add a new trait. I'll call it cheerful. And there it is. If you don't mind the work, I actually recommend adding eye and hair color attributes, since these actually show up under another feature of this app called statistics. If you actually fill that out for all of your sims, you'll be able to see what the distribution of these traits is in your save file. Apart from the store and photo option, my next favorite feature are the events you can save. They can be shared between sims, and you can add notes and photos to them as well. Staying on the example of this sim, we have a marriage shared between Jacqueline Parks as an event. So it's a type of fact. If I wanted, I could add more details, including multimedia. So I can add a video, I could add photos, anything I really have about that particular event. If you keep track of the events using the real life date they happened, you can actually also follow them under another really cool feature, the timeline view. I recommend simply using the actual real-time date and hour the event happened for you when you were playing the game, so that you can use that really cool feature. That is actually where this app is especially powerful for those playing the Sim History Challenge, in which their Sims events follow real-time years and dates throughout the decades. So anyone playing that challenge can really utilize the birth date and timeline view as it's actually intended, since this is of course not made for fictional stories. It's made for actual real family trees with real dates. So people recording real-time dates for their Sims events can really take advantage of that. You can access the timeline view under the family drop-down menu. You can then scroll left and right throughout their historical timeline. It's a shame you can't actually click onto an event within the timeline and then access that event's details, but maybe this is something which will be added in the future. Another unique feature about this app that I haven't seen in other ones is the reports section. Here you can create reports about an individual sim or about all the sims in your file. For example, under the person timeline, all events related to your current selected sim are listed. You can do the same for a family as well. Some other useful reports are the marriage list and parentage list. If you keep your family tree up to date, the statistics feature, which is also found under the family drop-down menu, can also be pretty interesting. It gives you fun stats like who was married the most often or had the most kids. For example, here under the marriages tabs, who married the most, when they were married. Again, a lot of this will be useful if you use real-time dates. Especially if you're using historical dates, then you can actually see, who was the youngest when they were first married, age differences, things like that. Still, the statistics are useful for more universal general traits not tied to time. For example, again, you can see how many people were divorced the most. You can see information about children and how many children were had, about genetics. So here, again, we have those eye colors I mentioned, and you can see how gender is distributed throughout your save file. I think this family tree app is pretty solid, and it so far is definitely my favorite amongst those I've tried in the past. For me, the only real downside is that you cannot share your family tree publicly, and of course, it's only limited to Windows. It is possible to export the Gedcom file and import it into an app that does have an online feature, but it doesn't import the portrait photos. Since I don't share my family trees publicly, it's not much of a big deal for me, but it could mean double work for you if you want to use my family tree in tandem with sharing your tree publicly. I know lots of us can't get enough of our sim families and tracking their every move, so I hope I can help you get closer to that perfect documented family with this app. If you're curious about other ways you can document your sim stories, make sure to check out the tour of the digital sim life planner I made. There's also a printed sim planner for those who prefer pen and paper. What do you think about the Family Tree app? Is it something you want to give a try? Or do you have another app that's your favorite? Let me know in the comments below.